So, what are some of the biggest challenges that manufacturers might face when they're ready to transition to Industry 5.0?
I think the challenge is that I mean the challenges are all out there, I guess, and they don't directly motivate a transition to Industry 5.0. Factories need to be, or manufacturers need to be much more flexible than ever before. We live in a increasingly fractious geopolitical landscape where manufacturing organizations are finding they need to respond to shifting supply chains, kind of moving their own operations in response to changes in the world and so on. Increasing demand from customers for more flexible products, competition stepping up, huge challenges in innovation to solve some of the biggest problems we face on the planet today around sustainability, for example, in manufacturing and the industries that manufacturing serves are, some of the biggest areas where we can make improvements to improve sustainability. Strong agenda around ethics in manufacturing and so on. All of these challenges need to be responded to. Industry 5.0, I think, has a lot to offer in terms of solving those problems by kind of returning to a world where we put people first and put it at the center of things. I think it brings a lot of those challenges into focus, and also getting engineers across disciplines to work together is the best way to elevate our approach to solving some of those problems. And then, like I say, finally, the layer of technology on top to really enable that and supercharge it.
What do you predict will be the next significant developments in smart manufacturing following the adoption of Industry 5.0? I mean, I know we need to get to the adoption first, but then as you look forward after that, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think that as Industry 5.0 is implemented, as collaboration improves, as these tools kind of come into play, I think it drives an environment which has much richer opportunities for innovation and an environment where there's a lot more flexibility. And so those two things will help to address some of the problems that I was alluding to earlier, so sort of directly address some of those problems. I think it also creates a much more dynamic environment, which will open up other opportunities. And so, one of the trends that we see amongst several of our customers, certainly not all of them, by the way, but amongst several of our customers, is the idea of, decentralizing manufacturing, creating smaller, more localized factories, which can, and being able to sort of pop them up kind of quickly as well, to be able to respond to changes in the market, to address challenges with supply chains, to shorten supply chains if necessary, to improve sustainability, all that kind of thing. So I think that kind of flexibility in the way that factories are implemented is one of the things that one of the significant changes that Industry 5.0 can drive. But then, and I think it's at sort of one end of the spectrum, and at the other end of the spectrum, if you're building jet engines, for example, you've got a whole different set of problems. I mean, you're trying to really face up to some of the most challenging problems of sustainability, for example. And Industry 5.0 has something completely different to offer in that space. There's very complex technical problems that need solving, huge amounts of innovation that are going into the next generation jet engines, for example. By driving collaboration and bringing a lot of this technology to bear, Industry 5.0 also has a lot to say about to contribute to that kind of situation as well.
This idea of these factories, these mini factories, so to speak, popping up, that seems like it would be a really big endeavor to undertake. And I'm trying to visualize it, and it's a little difficult to visualize a pop-up factory.
Yeah. And so we don't, I mean, to be clear, we don't see it amongst the kind of the big OEMs today that have gigantic factories where they're churning out tens of thousands of cars or building aircraft or something like that. It's not for that part of the market. But we do see, innovative startups is quite a strong theme, actually. We see quite a lot of sort of smaller organizations trying to figure out how to solve that problem, to bring manufacturing closer to where it's needed, or, like we say, to respond to a change in supply chain and suddenly move the manufacturing from one side of the world to the other. What you need is a system that is flexible, that can learn and that can respond to a new environment very quickly. Bringing up a new factory is a really complex endeavor, but having a system that can sense what's going on and can respond to that and adjust the way that it approaches a task gives you the flexibility to get much closer to that dream, if you like. I think the really key thing is that all of this talk about digitalization and artificial intelligence and all the rest of it, we've definitely been through a period of several years where this has driven a fear of replacing people and undermining people's jobs and all that kind of thing. And I'm really, really pleased to say that the narrative has matured and the understanding of the problem has matured. And that we can't do manufacturing without people that kind of understand it. It's fundamentally at odds with what it is that we need to try to achieve. And so really, I think the key message is that thankfully Industry 5.0 brings us back to an understanding of the human centricity of manufacturing, and this technology is there to help. In the development of Nexus, we partner really closely with Microsoft. Many people will be familiar with the AI tools that Microsoft has published, and I think they get it exactly right when they call them co-pilots. That's exactly how we imagine and positioning all this technology going forward. So co-pilot, it's there to assist and definitely not to replace the people.
So thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Steve, so much for being here today. And until next time, stay curious.